I'm Michael Fox, and this is the Prospector News Podcast. And I have joining me today, I have Keerit Jutla, who is the president and CEO of the Association of Mineral Exploration of British Columbia. Welcome back to the podcast, Keerit.
Thank you so much for having me again. Appreciate it.
It's always good to get your organization's input on things that are constantly in change in the province of British Columbia. And it looks like we've got another one of those tipping points in time. But before we get into that discussion, let's get an overview of what the Association of Mineral Exploration of BC is.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So AME is the Association for Mineral Exploration. We have over 5,000 members who are either based in or operate in British Columbia. So our members span from all over the country, all over the world, include indigenous, non-indigenous peoples, and really focused on how we explore for the minerals that we need for the future that we want. And we've been actively involved in a lot of key policies and a lot of key engagement with our diverse membership to ensure that we have a strong, thriving industry moving forward, from prospector to junior to smaller, medium, larger mine to all of the services that support it.
Wonderful. So what we're going to talk about today is a report that you folks have just penned and released. It's called What We Heard. Now, this comes about from ultimately a court case with a result that occurred in September of 2023 regarding consultation and staking. Am I correct? And let's start the conversation about that court case, its findings, and how it upset the apple cart.
So in September 2023, a court decision was reached in the Gitxaala versus British Columbia case. And that case, the main issue was with respect to consultation with indigenous peoples during the process of granting mineral claims or staking claims. The nation and other groups argued that the province's system was not constitutional. It failed to comply with the consultation duty, and it violated the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act and UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So the court found that the Mineral Tenure Act is constitutional. So it is constitutional. The court did not, the court decision did not impact existing mineral claims in British Columbia. The court granted the province 18 months for industry, indigenous peoples, and government to come together and build a consultation standard for staking. So the court did find that the chief gold commissioner owes a duty to consult to indigenous peoples with respect to claim staking. And also the court found that UNDRIP is not enforceable as law in British Columbia. And those are principles. So from that point onwards, right, AME was ready to then start beginning that key homework, which was, all right, we have 18 months to build a staking system that has a consultation standard. Let's begin the work. And already that was one of the most comprehensive systems in Canada, right? Other jurisdictions that use UNDRIP have free entry. So we were doing something new here. And so that was the basis of the case and what it summarized. And it's just, I think, important to also note that that case is being appealed, and that case will be heard in January 2025. And AME is an intervener in that case to ensure that our members' voices and the industry's voice is heard.
Wonderful. That's a good summary of what the court actually ruled and what its effects were. The puzzlement that I had was, how does one consult about staking when you haven't done any work? All you're doing is saying, this giant moose pasture, I'd like to see if there's something there. I hear things like this, I see court rulings of this nature, and the first question I always go is when, and the answer to a lot of people is it's never too early to start consulting, but when is it too early to start consulting? If I'm a prospector and I've staked, 100 acres of rock to see if there's anything of value there, I'm going to spend probably 2 or 3 years just kicking those rocks and taking samples to see if it's worth my while to explore any further. Why do I need to consult other than to let the local communities know that I'm there?
Mike, you summarized it almost perfectly now for what the root issues are here and why we did our own What We Heard report. Listen, it is so important for the experts who know how staking, prospecting, exploration works practically to be directly at the table to build the policies that work. And the reason why we had to do a What We Heard report is we found that those who were either advising on some of these policies from different stakeholders, in government, sometimes from other industry groups or companies as well, did not have that understanding or knowledge on what staking, what non-invasive exploration is, what core drilling is, and what mining is. I mean, I went into conversations when I asked people, what do you think staking a claim means? And the answer was, well, you can do whatever you want with the land, and that means you own the minerals. And that was a startling litmus test for where we were and what different people's understandings were who were charged with building this. And I say again and again and again, if you stake a claim, you do not own the land, you do not own the subsurface minerals. You have a chattel interest in those minerals to explore for those minerals and to see if something is there. It is a process that fosters innovation, research, and development, and is a substantive industry for prospectors and juniors who are vital to finding new mineral deposits. So that was a key thing that we had to make sure that and educate government on, and I think do some backtracking to ensure that I think whatever government's understanding was of it and what they were telling other stakeholders, that the real facts of what this all was came out. So to your first point is that was a key thing we've told government is said, look, you can't drill without a Section 10 Mines Act notice of work permit. You can't mine without Mines Act and other legislation authorizations. Every single step of these process is separate and distinct. So when I hear questions like, why would you stake a claim if someone doesn't want to mine there? And my answer is, it's a totally different conversation. This is about research and development. It's about entrepreneurship, and it's about the intellectual property for people who are doing the research, like you said, is you do a desktop research, you're doing the analysis, and then when you Mineral Tenure Act, when you stake a claim, then you're saying to the world, I have done a lot of work. I think there is some mineral deposit here, and all of the work I have done then led me to stake this claim. So to your point is, well, when do you consult on that? Is we've told the government that you have to understand how this process actually works, and that these mineral claims are people's livelihoods and intellectual property and must be protected. And I think an inconvenient truth for some folks in government is that these are legal rights, and whether that jives with the ideology of the current government in play is those rights must be protected and that it's vital to this industry as we move forward. And maybe the last thing I'll say, Michael, is our understanding right now in terms of, well, how is this going to actually be built out is the case was very, very clear. The case said there is the chief gold commissioner, so the person who, makes these decisions, has a duty to consult in the granting of claims. So I want to be very clear, like, what does that mean? What does the duty to consult mean? And what does consent mean as it relates to TRIPA? Consultation is something rooted in the Constitution of Canada, in Section 35 of the Constitution, and the case law that's built out from it, that says the Crown has to, when these decisions or when something could impact Aboriginal right and title, that you have to then talk to those nations to then understand what that is and then mitigate it. So what that would mean is that the chief gold commissioner, if let's say, Mike, you stake a claim somewhere and then that goes across the chief gold commissioner's table, that claim has been staked. And then now the next step isn't, well, should this claim be staked or not? The question is what are the next steps now and how you can do the exploration? That's what we're talking about here. And every single time we would get into rooms with government and other stakeholders about, okay, here's the clear direction we have. Are we going to get to work? The responses were, well, maybe we can look at mining overhaul, or maybe we can look at go and no-go zones. And maybe we can look, and we said, listen, all of this stuff you're talking about is totally outside of the scope of this act and what we're supposed to do. So the last, almost 16 months has been a very onerous and almost exhaustive process just to ensure government does the work that they're supposed to do and that they don't overscope it and don't try to, I think, spin any type of, I think these real questions and concerns on anything that they are about ensuring that there's fairness in this. So it's a really good question, Michael, and that's the key question on everything that we're doing here is we need to be ensuring that we have standards that are certain, transparent, and clear. And the way that that is demonstrated by any jurisdiction is if you actually start doing the work and implementing it. But like any game, you can't play a game unless you have goalposts and goalposts that are still in the same place. And what we've seen is continuous shifting of those goalposts from this government. And I'm glad that at least at this point now we're at a place where with our report, it's been very clear on what we have to do. So I think just in summary there, you opened up the Pandora's box there, Michael, but it's a very good question is we have to be very, very, very clear that consultation is proportional to the activity. So in this thing, you're not building a mine, you're not drilling. It's about when can I go walk on the land to kick rocks and take soil samples, and that then requires a proportional consultation standard. And whether that's sharing your work plan with the nation or with government, it's pretty clear cut in terms of the work that we have to do here.
Yeah. Now, that court case, one of the stipulations was that government had to get together with the stakeholders, which is your memberships, and the First Nations to carve out what consultation meant. And where we've gotten to here seems to me is that government just heard we need to build rules and then acted unilaterally without talking to anybody. Is that a fair assessment of the reaction by government to this ruling?
No, it's not. The ruling is very clear that let's do the work, let's do it meaningfully, and let's have all parties together to work on it. What we've seen is that all parties have been segregated into different tables. We don't know what's being discussed at other tables. We don't, we get told promises and assurances from government that, yes, we are building a consultation standard to March 2025. That's what we're doing. That's the work. And then we go into a meeting and then the scope creep starts again. And that is, well, maybe why don't we think about building a consent standard? Or what if we start doing this? And this is the work. Do you acknowledge that this is the work? And let's continue that work, like full stop. So we have been told, and once again, we requested to say, look, whatever the main table is, that's where we should be. Government has not invited us to that table. Instead, they've set up what's called a operational effectiveness table, which is some industry folks and folks from government. And I think the jury is still out on whether or not that is going to be a meaningful table that actually takes the direction that the people who are directly impacted by these changes and that it's at the core of their work are going to be taken, or if we're just going to be getting lip service, and government will proceed in a different course altogether. But it was really important that that we flagged this. So that was a key concern from our members, as members told us through our engagement with them, is they did not feel that government was listening or engaging with them. AME answered its members and chose to go to several regions in the province to listen to them and make sure their voices were heard. And these were members who are following the law, who are reconciliation centric, who want a bright future, who rely on this for their industry, and who saw meetings get canceled with government, or that there was only one-off engagement sessions with different proponents. So, we had to make sure that our members' voices were heard, and now it has been unequivocally provided to this government.
Okay, so the report itself, is it strictly from your association, or did you visit the First Nations communities to get their feedback on how they felt about this process as it has been?
Yeah, there were, in our different sessions, different members from, Indigenous members who are from AME. In terms of direct engagement with nations specifically, that is something, we wanted to do, but, at a certain point as well, I think government also wanted to step in and do their engagement. So we just engaged with our members. But also a lot of our open house sessions included people who weren't members, but also others from different organizations. A really great participant, his name's Kirby Muldoe, who was at our Kitimat session. And he was there as a representative from the First Nations Energy and Mining Council. And, actually his own individual quote is in our report very early on. I think was a really good example of how important it is for us to speak directly, right? So when we were talking, and I think a lot of those concerns came forward with respect to concerns about tailings or concerned about core drilling or concerns about these things, is we were able to say, like, hey, I hear you, but that's all Mines Act activity. That's all when you're building a mine or doing drilling. If it's just staking in Mineral Tenure Act, it is something very different, right? And it's a smaller scope of work. And I think when we will have that conversation is, he said, just listen, like, with that discussion, I just still encourage, those who are staking claims and doing that exploration to consult early and often with people, even, once when you stake your claim, just come out and come talk to the nation. And that's what a lot of our members are doing. And we want to now work with our members and nations directly to see how we can build stronger relationships and pathways to do that. So AME now is working directly with nations to say, how can our members build really stronger relationships with you? And how can our members start that, kicking rocks, walking on the land exploration activity? So I'm really happy where those things are going.
So there's some good things coming out of all of this mess then.
Yeah, I think look, with every I think the opportunity, not opportunity, but the only way that we knew our members would be heard, that we would be able to build something that works for our members, for Indigenous peoples, was for AME to do this work directly with First Nations. What we saw in this, Mineral Tenure Act modernization process, it went from something that is just about staking claims to then a vehicle by which land use planning would happen, negotiations would happen. Like, I don't know if this was ideally a vehicle where all of government's natural resource planning and land use planning and land access processes would be done. But we were very clear that, look, we support all processes that bring more certainty, in a reconciliation centric way, but to have the right conversation at the right table and the right act. Like, the Mineral Tenure Act is just the Mineral Tenure Act. It's not the modernized land use planning. It's not treaty negotiations. It's claim staking, non-invasive exploration. So let's stick to the scope. One of the things I think I noted was the Mineral Tenure Act and the MTO. It's just a thimble, right? This isn't how you build a mine, but the government's trying to pour an ocean of activity into this. So we have to be very clear, and it is the job of industry associations, not only ours, but should be the job of all other industry associations, to ensure that government is building policy the right way, that it is talking to all stakeholders meaningfully, and that they don't overscope any of these things that are outside of the work that we're supposed to do. And being I used to work in the bureaucracy, there are amazing people there doing hard work, and they're, subject to the direction of whoever's elected at the time. So, I don't want to put it on, bureaucrats here, but it's essential that, we keep to our scope, we do the homework that's in front of us, and that's how we can make meaningful change, one incremental step at a time.
Wonderful. So the report has been published. It's been given to government. Have you had a response yet from government and First Nation stakeholders for that matter?
We haven't had a formal response from government. We have, continued to work at our operational effectiveness tables, but the response that we haven't gotten yet is a clear acknowledgement that yes, 1 + 1 is 2. That yes, this is what prospecting is, this is what staking is, this is what the activity is. And we have not got the response yet that says, let's just build a consultation standard. And consultation standards are it's not, let's reinvent the wheel, let's build something bigger than what's there. It's proportional to the activity. So we continue to have to remind government, saying, look, if you want to disregard what the court said and want to build consent, just tell us, because that's not what the work is in front of us. And what we're hopeful to hear now from government is, we have different solutions and we have different processes that we'll put together, is to see what their proposals are, to understand who they're getting these proposals from. Do the people that they're getting proposals from understand the industry? And also, is what we're building not just the status quo, but also respectful, right? We want to build something that is reconciliation centric, but also something that is not overly onerous, not something that is pay to play. And when I say that, I mean that if you have a standard that is so high or that is so time intensive, there's only certain people in the industry that can afford to do that. So you can't create a system that, by how it's designed or implicitly, calls off or chokes out like half of the industry, right? And we have made that very clear to the government. And I think that's something that we are going to watch very carefully in terms of some of the intent here. So it has to be fair for everyone. Finally, I think it needs to be something that is clear and stable, because listen, Mike, capital is leaving BC. In the last 2 years, we've seen a $200 million decrease in capital investment into junior exploration and staking because of all of this uncertainty. And once I said before, I said it earlier, is like, there should never be any once you know something is occurring, then it's implicit upon a government to then take action. And if you don't, then, are you implicitly allowing people to be killed off from an industry? And that's something we expect government to answer and to be held accountable to our members. Listen, there's other big projects that have been put on hold because of all of this regulatory uncertainty. Like, to be very blunt, Michael, is people's livelihoods are on the line here. People have mortgaged their houses. They're doing what they were told by government. They're following the rules, and those rules keep changing on them. It's not fair, right? And not only is it not fair, but these people then are not even being heard or are being stigmatized by false perceptions and unfair accusations by those with different intentions. It's just people who want to do their work and who want to do their work honestly and in good faith with others. So, it's something that is really important for government to acknowledge and understand. Finally, I think another key thing here is to, once again, ensure confidentiality. One of the things in our report, and I think it's been great to educate people, is the entire industry, how diverse it is, and how you go from a concept to a mine. And look, you don't get mines without mineral exploration. You don't get mines without prospectors. You don't get mines without junior companies. Everyone in the industry understands how essential these people are, essential how the ecosystem is. A whale doesn't exist without the smaller fish and the plankton that's in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
And now that we've educated government on that, I think they are now looking at how they adjust either promises that they made, either any analysis that they did without checking in on these type of items. But if we want to meet the critical mineral future that this government has outlined, if we want that low carbon future, that strong critical mineral strategy, you need mineral exploration. The World Bank has said that by 2050, the world will need a 500% increase in critical minerals supply. What does that mean? That means that the mines we have currently in BC are not enough. The mines that we have in the queue are not enough. It means we have to keep exploring, and we have to do it in a way that's a non-onerous way. And we can't just advocate for short-term industry gains that will create a long-term implication for the mineral exploration industry. And if whoever is elected then chooses to do that, right, then that's where our industry will ensure that whoever that government is, whoever those decision-making are, that they're held accountable for it. So I hope that answers your question.
Answers the question wonderfully. And at the end of the day, I think everybody wants the same thing. They want to be able to earn a living, put a roof over their head, and food on the table for their families. And
Michael, I want to be very open and candid here, and I know I've spoken and provided some of the key points here, but every single person in this province deserves compassion and respect. And I want to be very blunt here, and you've been someone who, since I started early on, engaged with me and talked with me, and seen the progress here. Is when I hear different people who are prominent in building policy describe some of our members as either cowboys or backwards or anything. I have zero tolerance for it. And these are people who have families, who need to put a roof over their head, who have livelihoods, who have been either in Canada, they're new immigrants who are doing this work or have been here for 7 generations. They're also indigenous peoples who who want to have stronger economic prosperity. And these people are already working together and building relationships together. So when they are stigmatized or spun by someone else who just doesn't like mining and are said that they are cowboys or they're this, I have zero tolerance for it. And then when those people can't even say to government, we are doing the work, we're doing what you've told us, we are engaging with nations, we are going out, because of the onerous capacity constraints that you're putting on nations, putting on the smallest people, putting on the mom and pops that a government, a left-leaning government in the past used to be champions for and are now not. These people are left frustrated, they're left helpless, and they're left hopeless. So for the parties who are going into this election, I think they need to have a hard look at themselves to say, how are you going to represent all BCers, whether you are in the Lower Mainland or whether you are in Cranbrook, Smithers, Terrace, anywhere? How are you going to ensure that everyone has fairness, that everyone has access to these things, not just where your voter base is? And if you are going to make legislative changes to acts that directly apply to people who live in Cranbrook, Smithers, Terrace, are you going to make those exact same changes to the exact same analogous acts that would be applied to building a home in Victoria or a mall in Vancouver? And something tells me that if that were the case, there might be a lot more attention on this.
I think you're absolutely right. Now
So thank you for that, Michael. It is important that that it's just really clearly known. Our members are reconciliation centric. They want a strong BC. They want something that works for everyone, and they are still struggling with, am I being treated fairly? And I can't tell them conclusively, yes, you are. And let's see what the next few months look like.
And speaking of the next few months, the judge said that this had to be done in 18 months, which puts it at March of 2025. The election, is that before or after that?
The election is before that. So the election will be in October. And so I think, look, I do want to highlight that, the current government, they were, putting money into critical minerals, into the First Nations Equity Fund, to, not putting forward OBPS. They've done some good things, but I think now it's essential that we get answers from all parties in terms of shift from hyperbole to action, shift from ideology to implementation. How are you going to ensure that people get a fair shake, that everyone feels part of this BC province, and that you are making common sense, practical policy decisions that are based in evidence, not in ideology? And I think that will be a key thing for people who are in the natural resource sector or in any part of this BC economy to look at. That's objective, that's clear. It is a fair question for all parties to ensure that we have a reconciliation, environmental centric, sustainable economy that is done practically and fairly. And I look forward to hearing what both parties have to say on that.
Wonderful. Now, between the election and between them coming out with what the policy will be, you folks have your annual convention in January. What can you tell people that might be interested in coming to attend that?
I'm really excited for our next Roundup conference. The conference theme is securing our future, and we are lining up some very high profile speakers. We're expanding a lot of our process, our programming as well, still rooted in the geology and the geocentric items of what makes AME what AME is, but also to be bringing to our members these key items that directly impact their future. To have key Indigenous speakers at our gathering place to talk about how we can build better relationships in a practical way, but also a lot of the very key policy discussions, the critical minerals discussions, and the geopolitical ones that are going to shape our future. So I am very excited about our Roundup conference. I encourage everyone to register, to get in touch with us about booths and sponsorships, because it's going to be a big one, a prominent one, and I look forward to talking to you at that one as well, Michael.
Yes, definitely, and I will be there. We are once again proud to be a media sponsor of that event. What are the dates for next year?
So it's from January 20th to 23rd. You can go online. If you Google AME Roundup or ameroundup.ca, you'll see information there. You can also get in touch with us at info@amebc.ca. Yeah, we're really looking forward to a really good roundup. And I think to your point in terms of how are all these discussions going to come into play, well, the court said we got to build something by March 2025. So the goal is to have something that's workable by that roundup. So let's see where we are.
Wonderful. Is registration open yet, or is it coming soon?
Registration is open, and you can go online to register. And if you're looking for any other sponsorship or booth opportunities, you can also look there as well.
Wonderful. Excellent event to be at, people, and highly recommend it. So until we get an opportunity to talk again next, it's been a pleasure, Keerit.
Thank you, Michael. And I want to just close by saying I am optimistic and hopeful for the future. The meeting with different nations, meeting with Indigenous peoples, meeting with our members, there is so much positivity when we're directly and bilaterally working together. And AME is going to continue doing that work to bring certainty, clarity, hope, and a strong economic and reconciliations future that works for all of us. So thank you for your support, and I look forward to continuing this work on behalf of our members, Indigenous peoples, and BCers.
Wonderful. Thanks, Keerit.
Thank you so much.
The Prospector News podcast is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and are not to be taken as investment advice. Listeners need to do their own due diligence and seek advice of a licensed investment advisor.